Hello there, everybody. I'm Captain Jim Palmer, the Dream Business Coach, and I'm the founder of the Dream Business Mastermind and Coaching Program, author of 6 books, which used to be behind me, but we're moving next week, so they're down. And I'm the creator of No Hassle Newsletters, which I created in 2007. And it's my Done For You newsletter program has served over 1,200 small business owners in 9 countries. But today, I am still the host of Dream Business Radio now in its 10th year. This is episode 529, a very special live edition of Dream Business Radio with Susan Harrow. Susan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. And I love, oh my gosh, congratulations. That is a lot of podcasts.
That is a lot of, I know. Everything started like 10 years ago or somewhere, in that time frame. And little did I know, still doing it, which is, I'm sure there's a lesson in there somewhere, but I've been really excited to talk with you. But let me do one quick piece of business, and I talk really quick, so it won't last long. Folks, this episode of Dream Business Radio is brought to you by the Dream Business Mastermind and Coaching Program. If you're an entrepreneur or small business owner and you're tired of slow to no growth in your business, if you're feeling overwhelmed, unfocused, and especially if you'd like to learn how to create multiple streams of revenue in your business, very important, then you want to be part of this extraordinary virtual mastermind led by me, Captain Jim Palmer, the Dream Business Coach. You can learn more at dreambizcoaching.com, dreambizcoaching.com. All right, let me tell you about Susan. And she was either referred to me or, I know, yes, you were. Denise Griffiths. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that. Anybody Denise refers to me, boom, they're like on my show. I kind of pretend, well, I got to check them out. But if Denise gives you the stamp of approval, she's just
so great. She's just the best
amazing.
Such a marvelous person.
So I've been looking forward to this, but this show's like booked out for about 6 weeks. So I was like, I can't wait to talk to Susan. Anyway, so Susan Harrow is a media trainer. She's a marketing strategist, a martial artist, and she is the author of the best-selling book, Sell Yourself Without Selling Your Soul. And I'm a brander, and I got to tell you, that is one great title. For the past 33 years, Susan has run 33 years, has run Harrow Communications. I don't believe it, but okay. A worldwide media consultancy where she's trained thousands of entrepreneurs, authors, and speakers worldwide to turn their message into money while becoming highly desirable repeat guests who shine in the media spotlight. Susan has prepped her clients and course participants to appear on Oprah, 60 Minutes, The Today Show, Good Morning America, Fresh Air, Marketplace, Bloomberg, MSNBC, NPR, just to name a few, right? It's a small little resume there. And she has an amazing course called The Zen of Fame, Your Genius Gone Viral. And what you might not know about her, although I think I tipped my hat a little bit, she is a black belt in Aikido and was recruited by the CIA to be a spy. Say it's not so. Susan, how are you doing today?
It's so great to be here. And yes, I've waited for a long time to be on your show too, because you're booked out so much, which is just a test to the success of people wanting to be on podcasts and wanting particularly to be on your show because you're so established.
Well, there's things that I learned in my, I'm 64, so I've been doing this a while, and I learned about 2 words, consistency and persistency. There's a lot to be said for that. And, when I start
media, those are really 2 great things, because I think people give up too early sometimes. And these kinds of things, like you've heard the saying, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success.
Yes.
And I think that kind of consistency and persistency is something that is kind of underrated, and in both areas, because I think that the ongoing, sometimes people try something once or twice and think, and my sweetie, by the way, was on the first podcast, Denise's podcast. And he's like, I'm not polished. I hear all of these great people. And I said, I'm sorry. And I said, it's your first podcast ever. How can you expect to be an expert on something that you've never done before? You're an expert in your field. He's a screenwriter, and he repairs screenplays and stories, but he just expected himself to be great. And I'm like, yeah, he goes, I could be really great if I've done like 50 of these. And I'm like, yes, all of us.
Well, you tell him. I mean, I had this massive fear, like, of public speaking. Almost didn't graduate high school. It really stunted my growth as an entrepreneur. And then I learned to get over that. And it turns out I'm a good speaker. People enjoy listening to my stories, etc. And But my first when I decided to go out and be a speaker, my first one, oh my gosh, I could not wait for it to be over. Not because it was bombing, because I felt like it was bombing. I ended up selling some books and stuff at there. So from a standpoint of that, it was fine. But so much of that stuff lives in our head. And the second thing you tell him, then we'll get to some questions that I did prepare for. Um, People love authenticity. They are so drawn to people who are genuine and authentic. And that was actually, we talk about 529 episodes now, and right before we went live, I shared with you, I started a video channel on YouTube in 2009 when that little flip camera that Kodak put out for like 110 bucks. I don't know if you remember that.
You
And
do.
suddenly you could record your video and upload it to YouTube, right? Like, wow, that was earth shattering. And my first several videos, I don't know how many, I'm going to say at least 20 or 30, probably had an average viewership of 2. And then I learned to stop pretending to be a smart, polished businessman with very good advice. And I just started being myself. And that's sort of what resonated. Anyway, we're off to the races here, Susan. I
Well, I
knew
like
this
that
would
you
be a
bring up
fun
the to be
interview.
yourself, because I think with the pressure that we're under today with really, vulgar vulnerability and the faux fame and the oversharing and the filters, that really what we're looking for you is to be you, and to be you with all your quirks, and not to look to be like someone else. And I think that's one of the hardest things, because everyone who comes to me for training, whether it's clients or workshop participants or people who want to be a thought leader, that's, I think, the biggest fear is like, well, people are going to see me, which we want. We want to be seen, but we only want people to see our best qualities. And we want to be
Right.
seen. And there's this push pull. I want to be seen. I don't want to be seen. And I'm afraid of the consequences. And now there are pretty dire consequences in our culture with cancel culture. And so you do
Yeah.
actually need to be prepared and yet natural in yourself, which seems like it's directly opposed to each other, but both are true at the same time.
So I'm super impressed with your bio. I'm intrigued with some of the information you want to share. I mean, seriously, 33 years running your own business. I find that hard to
It's a
believe, but
long time.
okay.
You're so sweet. I
Far be
appreciate
it from
that.
me to question. So what's the biggest myth that most people believe about publicity or PR? And are they the same, publicity, PR? Are they interchangeable or are they different?
Well,
It's kind of like sales and marketing, they're
yeah, I think
different.
it's different. But when we're talking about publicity, we're talking about getting placed in the media, called earned media, which is you're not
Okay.
paying for it, and you're not just blasting a press release and having it posted up on an advertising site like Yahoo or an online site. That's not real publicity. Real publicity is getting booked on TV, radio, in print, and podcasts too now count as real media, but traditional media. And so I think the biggest myth that people have is that, number one, I'm just going to get out there and my show or whatever it is going to go viral and will dump $1 million on my doorstep. But also the fact is that people think that they can just wing it. And nothing could be further from the truth, because in this medium, particularly in TV, when you have 2 of 4 minutes, it takes quite a lot of practice to go back and forth. And to have your actual any kind of appearance or interview have an effect, it's a highly it's a highly cultured way of creating your messaging, so it
Hmm.
reaches your audience directly and it has a real effect on your business. So what I'm really looking for is, when you're out there and you're speaking, what comes back to you? For Are you growing your business and your brand? And you don't want a lot of calls from looky loos from people who are not your right audience. You want to drive business in the direction that you want, which means the clients and the customers and the people and whoever you want to engage with you, short, medium, long term, to be the right ones. And that takes quite a lot of practice. And then to be able to be fluid in a conversation and not say something that you regret that's going to ruin your business or brand.
Yeah, I've always believed great marketing does two things. It attracts the right people that you should be working with, and it repels the rest, or the looky-loos, or the people that they're not really a good fit.
That's right.
Great marketing, and of which PR is part of that strategy, should do both of those things. You agree with that?
I do agree with that. And I think that myth is that I'm already that I should already be great at it because I can talk. It's just like, when authors say, I can write because I can read. And it's the same thing, is that this is really it's like taking War and Peace and putting it and smooshing it down to haiku, because it's a
Hmm.
very highly specialized way of speaking that's highly, highly condensed. And that takes quite a lot of practice, and it takes role play. And it also takes role play and like, what questions are you going to be asked? What questions don't you want to be asked? And to be able to navigate that landscape really seamlessly in order to get your message out.
So the first 10 to 12 years of my entrepreneurial journey, I created a newsletter business, and then a second one, No Hassle Newsletters, and I branded myself the newsletter guru. And I told you, well, my first book was The Magic of Newsletter Marketing, and then I did like 200 podcast interviews on that, and I went out and spoke about 30 different times in about 12 months around the country. Some it's like blast, talk about getting rid of the fear, just going for it. But my wife Stephanie used to say, boy, if I shake you up awake in the middle of the night, you can say, I'm Jim Palmer, the newsletter guru, repeat and referral business. You say boom, 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 right? Um, and it's interesting because I think, Susan, that podcasting has changed so much of the landscape. But what in the specific area of PR that you work with people getting on TV and radio, TV especially, as you said, you prepare people for like a 2-minute interview, maybe three, but those little segments are pretty short.
They're very short. That's why you need to have your messaging down pat, where you need to have your questions prepped. We work on the questions, we work on your props, we work on your B-roll, the background footage that can speed up the conversation super quickly. So when you do have those 2 minutes, they're super potent and they're very lasered. So you get out exactly what you want to say in a context that sounds natural when you're being interviewed. And I do media train people for podcasts too, because podcasts may be longer, it may be 10, 20, 30, even an hour, but that
Right.
doesn't mean that you can lazily tell just longer meandering stories. It's just you tell more stories and in a longer period of time, but they have to be just as impactful.
Why do you believe you need a content management strategy for media appearances, whether podcasts, presentations, etc.? I mean, as you said, you can't just wing it, right? There has to be some sort of a cohesive strategy.
Today, we want to know who you are, what you stand for, and what you bring to the table. And
Mm.
that has to be codified very quickly and very concisely. And your presence actually speaks louder than your words. And I say, your words are the ambassadors of your spirit. So everything has to line up exactly. But today, we are really looking to see all of those different things too. And people want to know more about your personal life. So how do you set those boundaries? How do you set the kind of container that is going to satisfy our lust for knowing who you are? And we want to know and love you, but at the same time, you can protect your privacy and protect the things that are private and still connect deeply with an audience.
So I need to dive into that because I've always believed, especially with social media, you no longer have like the Ward Cleaver 9 to 5 worker bee personality, and then you have the evenings and weekends. There's no separating who you are. To me, it's like, and please feel free to disagree with me because it would be interesting. But I tell some of my clients, stop sharing all these your views on these hot button topics, and then in the very next thing, you're sharing whatever your expert brand and your opinions are. Whether it be marketing or something like that. I guess when you said there's the personal side and the professional side, it's really hard to separate those two. Do you
I think
understand what
you
I'm
need to be
asking?
very deeply intentional. I think
Okay.
that's the underlying basis is all of my views. You might want to just suddenly blurt something out, but I would say really consider before you blurt,
Hmm.
because your thoughts on hot topics are going to be out there forever. So it's really
Hmm.
important. If you want to incite a conversation, then know that you are going to be inciting it or creating controversy, but have that be ready for it, and all of those things are going to be, I mean, Camus says you're the sum of all of your choices. You're also the sum of all of your social media
That's right.
um, right now. So we have to be very intentional about what we want out there. And you can never be I don't want to even use the word careful, but I think considered would probably be a, a better term to have that out there. And right now, like I have one client who's considered an influencer in the medical field. And part of it, she has a lot of videos now on Instagram that are on lots of different topics. But the topic that is, the theme that is running through everything for her is really standing up for yourself, speaking to your doctors
Mm,
frankly about what you need, being communicative, and not accepting what a doctor says just because a doctor says it, really understanding what is best for yourself. And for women specifically, to know what's out there and available to them, because a lot of times in this culture it's not presented in that way, or because women are, maybe their illnesses or their whatever they're presenting with isn't considered in a very it's not taken seriously. So she talks
right.
about, but that's the theme that comes through, even though she's talking about diverse topics, that's really the theme. And I think we want to consider what's underlying, who we are and what our brand is and what we represent. And then to really be thinking about one of my favorite sayings is Gandhi, my life is my message. Is that true? Is everything you do, say, are, and think, from your words to your website, does it have the look and feel of you? If I meet you, is it going to be what you present on social media and on your website and in traditional media?
Yeah, that's really good. From the example that you shared with your client, I think what some of the stuff she was sharing, in addition to being a insulin expert, those are like extensions of care, well being, well care, things like that. So I think that's good. What would you think? I'm just curious, and then I'll move off this. But if she started on tomorrow, she started blasting all her opinions on the southern border, or the price of oil, or just anything that's outside of what I call staying in her lane. Is that a good idea or not?
If it's within your brand, meaning if it's something that you really stand for that's important to you, and also I would connect that with what's important to you, well, why it's important to you. Like, why are you speaking about that? Like, why
Hmm.
is that meaningful to you? That's the connective tissue that I think needs to happen. Not just, here's my opinion on this, but to really think about and to use your time carefully. I mean, right now, our time is our most precious commodity in my view.
Your time and the limited time people have to connect with you. So, what,
Yes.
in my opinion, what do you want them consuming? What information from you do you want them in 30 seconds or 3 minutes? What do you want them to remember about you for that day or that week? Right.
I think that's so important. And one of the reasons why I took up martial arts, why I took up Aikido, was because I wanted a more body-based approach.
Mm,
I took up Aikido for my business, actually. So for media
really?
training. Yes, because I thought, sometimes we're so spinning off into our heads, and I really wanted something that was grounded in embodiment. And
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 discipline.
it's discipline, but also devotion, because devotion has joy in it. And in Aikido, we talk about turning our lead into gold. It's
Mm,
transforming the things that are inside of us that maybe aren't so pretty into something that's beautiful and wanted. And I think the same goes for media training, is that sometimes our greatest vulnerability is our greatest strength, but also these kinds of stories that we have that we want to share. We don't just share a story because we want to be vulnerable. We share it to uplift and to really connect with people on a deep level. So it's not about sharing shame or demeaning ourselves. It's really about, to what end are we telling this story, and to what end does it grow our business and brand, and is this a story that we want to tell ourselves in our own mind, and is
right.
this a story that we want to tell out in public, and to really consider that super deeply. But to get back to Aikido for a second, is that part of why I love Aikido in terms of media training is that, making these small changes and doing, like my sensei or my teacher said to me, like, you throw 100 times and if one feels great, that's what you want to remember.
Mm.
And I think that's the same goes for media training. We're doing role play and we're doing realistic role play, and we want to know what the feel of it is, but we also, it needs to connect with our audience. And Aikido, you have to connect deeply in with touch with the person that you're throwing in order to be able to take them off balance and throw them. And it's the same in media. You want to create that touch or that connection, even if you're taking people off balance, like what you were saying. If it's a contentious conversation, you want to
Hmm.
be able to connect, take those people off balance, and then shift them to your point of view or open their minds in some ways. But I think it's that process of technique and training and tweaking that makes us successful communicators. Just like you doing all of those talks. When you first did your talk and you got certain audience response in some places that was probably unexpected, and then you do a next talk or some things fell flat, we don't know about that until we test it. So we
That's
test it on
right.
social media and we test it on real media and we test it in front of audiences, and we think something's really funny or really great, and something doesn't happen, and something else that was just off the cuff that we say people love and they really respond to. So it's the call and response that's really super important out in the world.
Susan, I knew this would be a fun interview, and the clock is ticking quickly. I had so many
Oh my
things to ask you.
gosh.
So, and excuse me for
And that was
asking
kind
you
of a
this.
long answer. So I was talking about shorter
No,
answers, but
I'm
yeah.
sorry for asking you live on the air, and I always remind myself not to do this. Can we go maybe 5 minutes longer, or do you have a hard stop?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
So, I'm sure somebody's going to go. No, I got to go. So anyway, I want to ask you about your books. Sell Yourself Without Selling Your Soul. Before I ask you that question, did you come up with that title, or did your editor or publisher? Or that's such a great title.
I came up with that title. It was my second speaking engagement ever to ASJA, the American Society of Journalists and Authors. Everybody
Mm.
in that room had a book. Obviously, I was speaking to how to promote your book. And I was giving a talk. And then at one point we went around the room and they asked people to talk about their next book that they were writing. And I'm thinking, oh my God, am I the only person in the room who doesn't have a book? And I thought of it, I think, in that second. And I said, my clients have been asking me to write a book. And they all felt like they were bragging, begging, or whoring to get good publicity. And I thought it didn't have to be so. So we went
Yeah.
around the room and I said, sell yourself without selling your soul. And after I spoke, Patty Brightman, who was the literary agent in the room, came up to me and said, I love your idea. I'm not promising you anything, but I would love to see a proposal and possibly become your agent. And Patty Brightman was the agent for John Gray, Men Are From Mars, and Richard Carlson, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff.
Wow.
So that's how I got
Congratulations.
my first agent. And it was from just thinking on the spot, going around the circle, like going, oh my God, I've got to talk about a book. And that was it. And Patty Brightman did become my agent. And we just did sell that book
It's
to
so interesting what's always up here that will just come out like without planning it. When I wrote Decide, which was my sixth book, and my others, marketing, strategy, growing business, all that good stuff. But this was my mindset. Decide is my entrepreneurial mindset book. Talk about all the crap that held me back and then how I overcame it. So there you go. See if it can help you. But I was doing an interview, like one of about 300 podcast interviews, and the book was almost done, but I was talking about it, and that somebody was interviewing on mindset, and I don't know, we probably talking about imposter syndrome, all these different things. And he goes, you know how some interviewers will say, what's the one thing, or it's always, I call it the one question. He goes, what one word, Jim, most signifies in your mind the difference between entrepreneurs who are average or achieve just, modest success, and those who achieve extraordinary success? And I said, decide. Well, what do you mean? I said, when you're presented with a challenge, an opportunity, a problem, or whatever, entrepreneurs who grow quickly and usually earn high incomes, they have the ability to quickly ascertain yes or no, plus or minus, and they make a decision, yes or no, not maybe, but they decide. And when I go to, I don't know if you see me, I'm always looking down writing because I want to remember things that you say. And I wrote that down, and that became the name of the book. So sometimes stuff is just buried like in your subconscious brain or something. But So anyway, so sell yourself without selling your soul, and you work with people one on one. I know you got courses on how to prepare them to be great at media, but talk about developing an actual plan before you blast yourself out there. I'm sure you're much more. I'm sure you much prefer your clients to be trained and ready before you kind of push the go button. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the Zen of Fame, Your Genius Gone Viral, I really codified everything that you need in that course to do great publicity. So the first part of that course is your messaging, getting your key messaging down. So that's the not wing it part. So you don't want to reach out into the media until you have your key and your core messaging strategy, that engagement strategy down, because once the media calls, then your words, whether they're live or recorded or in print, are forever there, and anyone can access them, including journalists via LexisNexis. So whatever you say is there permanently.
Mm.
So that's the first part. The second part is having your systems down, because PR brings hot leads to your door and you need to usher them through. So having your systems in place, whether that's an 800 number or your website, whatever, the brick and mortar, we want to have those systems down too, to make sure that your PR really works. And then the third part is the PR campaign that suits your style and your energy. Like some people I have one client who really has done really remarkable research 20 years ago. And now that research is being appropriated by people before she codified some of it in print. So when I
Mm.
referred her to a PR agency to work together with her thought leadership, we decided to create a print campaign first. So that knowledge and her research would be in print, which is a little bit harder to steal. At least it's more provable that she had done the research. So that's one of the things that we do. So those are the three parts to any kind of campaign. So I work with people one-on-one, and we were talking about like real role play, so you get the feel of what it's actually like to be interviewed, and then keep improving that process. And then we actually do interviews for each specific medium, because a print interview is different than a radio interview, podcast, and TV. um, but also, just so you know, something that I heard this great podcast with this gal who created these VIP days. And I do a thought leadership program. I have a thought leadership program. And I thought, if somebody wants to do it in a day, there is a process and a methodology and a 7-step system to become a thought leader in a day. Will it take, after you go through that process, will it still take practice and iteration?
Hmm.
Of course. But if you want to be an expert, authority, or a thought leader, you can start anywhere. And I know oftentimes people say, well, I'm just a beginner, and am I ready for you? I love beginners. It doesn't matter where you start. It's really like the willingness of you to learn and grow that's important, because anybody, even someone who's just beginning, can develop their thought leadership, because it's an opinion. If you have opinions, like we were talking about putting your opinions out on social media, well, thought leadership is just directed opinions on the thing that you're an expert in. So you do need to have that expertise and that gravitas
Yeah.
of where your knowledge and your experience is. But sometimes we have this hidden knowledge and hidden experience that can also be brought to bear. So part of the process is sort of uncovering your gold that you have, that connects your past to your present to your future self, and really packaging that successfully for the media, and then finding the right mediums, and really finding the right places where your audience is, and making sure that you're filling a gap that the media doesn't, that your competitors don't have, and that the media is new to the media as well. So I'm always looking for those specific angles, no matter if it's in the group programs or the one-on-one or the thought leadership um, day or program.
We got time for probably one or two more questions, Susan, and I'm
Okay.
trying to decide because I've got a list of 5 questions in front of me. I really want
Oh my
to.
goodness.
Yeah. I in your book, I think there was a chapter, 10 ways women give up power during a presentation, how to get it back. I'm really curious, even if you can share one or two of those.
Yeah, and I just heard Meghan Markle say, she goes, "People are always saying that I give women a voice. I don't give women a voice. Women already have a voice. I What women don't have is the power to use that voice, or they don't think that they have the power to use that voice. So I think the first step or the first thought is in our minds that we have a voice and we have permission and even an obligation to use it. So I think one of the ways that women get shut down is by being interrupted. And so what you can do if you're interrupted, and this goes for media, I guess goes for a meeting, whatever, is put up your hand as a stop sign. Wait. A little
Mm.
pattern interrupt. So the visual is a pattern interrupt, but then a little bit louder or sharper tone. Wait. And you can say, or put up the finger, this finger, too, and then you continue on. So the important thing is after you do this is to just continue on. That's number one. I think the biggest thing even before that is to believe you don't belong in the room. And I think when we talked about imposter syndrome just very lightly, men have it too, but it's 75% of all people, women particularly, have imposter syndrome. What does that mean? It means you think that you don't belong in the room. So if you
Mm.
shift that thinking, like Shonda Rhimes, one of the reasons why she was successful is that even at Dartmouth or in a Hollywood studio where it was all white males, is she always believed that she should be in the room. So to even never think that you don't belong is a really big mind shift. I belong everywhere. I am a person of the world. I am embraced everywhere. To actually shift that will stop not all ways of people trying to knock you off your pedestal or make you feel powerless, but just that believing that yourself and then really expanding your energy. That's another thing that we do in Aikido is expand energy top to bottom, side to side, back to front, everywhere before you go onto any media interview or before you go into any room.
Yeah, I mean, I think imposter syndrome permeates across the board. Men, women, beginners. I mean, my largest client that I had a few years ago was doing $34 million, and he had imposter syndrome. Like, how
Doesn't
am I
matter.
doing $34 million?
Yeah,
You know what
I
I
have a, I have
mean?
a male client too who does, I don't know how many million, but it's probably around 100 million or more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had it too. So it's not money, it's not prestige. It's really what's natural is to have doubt and imposter syndrome when you're moving to the next level. That's really natural. What's not natural is to compare and despair and to stay in the I'm not worthy of
Mm.
this. That's the part where we're really looking at to let go of. And it may come up continually. I think it's like the onion, to continually look at where that's coming up so we can let go of it and just peel ourselves down to the essential, which is what we all want to see anyway when we were talking about that, back to that vulnerability and seeing the true you.
Well, I gotta send my friend Denise Griffiths a thank you for introducing me to
Oh, I
you
love
because
that so
what a
much.
great interview, Susan. Man, but I was right to be looking forward to this for a month because you knocked it out of the
Me
park. I'm
too.
sure people are like, Jim, don't forget. Yeah, like I'm not gonna I'm not forget the question of how can they connect with you, Susan. How can people connect with you, get your book or whatever, and
Thank
learn more about your
you.
courses?
Yeah, so they can go to prsecrets.com, like public relations, prsecrets, plural.com. And the other thing, Jim, is that the one story that every interviewer is always going to ask you is, why do you do what you do? Why did you write your book? And so I have a 5 template that you can do in 5 minutes, how to create your story of origin. Some people call it your hero story, and that's at
Mm.
prsecrets.com/SIGPOD, SIGPOD. So all of you can do that in 5 minutes. And the story that you need for everything is that story of origin, why you do what you do. So it's prsecrets.com/SIGPOD. And I have lots of free videos and special reports. And if you want to connect with me one-on-one and become a client, I invite that as well.
That's awesome. Susan, thank you so much. I hope
Me
you have a
too.
wonderful holiday, and
Me
I'd love to
too.
have you back maybe
I'd love to be
maybe
back.
first quarter next year or at some point because I'm sure we've only scratched the surface on this.
Thank you so much.
Hey, folks, that wraps up this very special interview with my guest, Susan Harrow. I highly recommend you connect with her, follow her, and learn from her. She is the real deal, as you now know. You can connect with me at getjimpalmer.com if this is our only outlet so far. You can join me and about, let's see, what is it, 27 other smart entrepreneurs in the Dream Business Mastermind at Dream Biz Coaching, dreambizcoaching.com. Remember, part of my legacy building program, you can get all 6 of my books for free in the digital format. That's just the deal that I made for helping more entrepreneurs and still honoring my wishes to only work 3 days a week from now on. And so you can get them as Kindle books at Amazon, as Nook books at Barnes and Noble. I assume Nooks are still available, and they're also in the iBook store. So just go to Jim Palmer, and you'll get all 6 of my books. Download them. Quite the education for free. And that's it. Until this time, oh, my usual line is this time next week. But this time next week, we're moving. We're packing up and moving again. These nomads, Stephanie and I. But so right after the 1st. So let's see. That would be, I think, the 3rd. And you'll certainly know. Just follow me on email. Social media, you'll know. And I can't think of my next guest, but it'll be a good one. So, okay. He said so confidently. Anyway, I am Captain Jim Palmer, the Dream Business Coach. You take good care. I got about 5 more calls today. Holy smokes. Thank you, Susan. Take care.
Bye bye.